Hi there, and welcome to my advanced guide for going medieval. I'm Icon, and in this video I'm going to talk about a lot of different things that will make your life easier in this game. First off, I'm going to talk about character selection, a few things that are helpful there. After that, we're going to talk about early game decisions, where to settle. I'm going to talk about defenses in the early game and resource gathering, food preservation, and a couple of different things in between that should be helpful for you once you understood how the game works and you want to optimize your base a little bit more. So let's get started, shall we? When you're selecting your people, I personally have found a deep love to roll myself a person with a smithing value past 20, because later down the road when you get to use metal items, you can construct metal traps, and constructing these needs at least a smithing rank of 20, and training somebody to 20 when you don't have any experience beforehand takes a long time. Having somebody like this dude here in your settlement before everything starts is a big asset. Beyond that, I can't recommend enough to pick up somebody with the intellectual passion, because research is a thing. And in this game, it's not that important that you have somebody with a high skill value, except for a few exceptions like the smithing. The passions matter a lot. So somebody with the intellectual passion will learn really quick, as you see 2.5 times more XP, and very passionate people even 4 times more. Whatever might be the case, an intellectual passion is really useful, and I can't recommend it enough. Beyond that, keep yourself somebody in your settlement with a construction and a mining passion. Ideally on different characters, one for construction, one for mining, because construction and mining will eat up so much time in your settlement. It's crazy. You can't start early enough with people that learn faster and get their jobs done faster. Beyond that, I found that botany and culinary are quite cool to have, but no must-have. A standard botany and culinary skill range is enough. The more marksmanship you can get, the better. I personally found that melee is, in defense, not really important in the early game. Later down the road, when you want to smash down sieges, it gets more important. But as a rule of thumb, go with 2/3 of marksman specialization people and 1/3 of melee people, and you don't do anything wrong from the get-go. So let's get into the game and talk about the early game decisions. So once we start out, I really like to take a look around the neighborhood, as I like to say. I love to look for places like these, little crevices in the ground, or yeah, this is ideal. This place is what I'm looking for. And I like to settle really close to these, because underground storages for food are quite mandatory, especially when you do the springtime start. Summer comes and you want that as quick as possible. So these little holes are really cool kickstarters for your underground cellars and make stuff a lot easier. Beyond that, when you want to start out with your spot where you want to live, try to utilize natural chasms like these if you want to, or search for every natural barrier which makes it enemies harder to pass through. In this scenario, we are living in a very flat area, which is defense-wise one of the most difficult things to choose. In that kind of scenario, I really like to just go for things like these, settle near that, and carve out a basement as quick as possible. But when you go for that, keep one important thing in mind. When you want to carve out your basement, check out before you do that where your buildings are going to be. For example, I plan on building my houses and such here. When you now start digging your cellar into this direction because you feel like, oh, it would be a nice idea to have that all connected and everything, the moment one of your houses is on top of that, I'll illustrate you that. So the moment you do a house like this, and there's a cellar beneath that, even if they are not physically connected in any way, the cellar below here will have the same temperature as the room above. So TLDR, if you want to do some cellars to store food in, take care that there's no building above them. In this scenario, since I want to build here, I'm going to cut the cellar into the ground over at this place, for example. So we're going to dig like that and make sure that this is going to be under here. This way you can avoid temperature plummets. Also keep in mind another logistical thing. If your food stocks are in this vicinity, put your cooking area right in the vicinity of that. So for example, we started with a campfire, so we could put that down here. So people that want to pick up food for cooking measures, they don't have a long way to run for. Beyond that, it's up to you. I always like to check out that wherever I settle down, there's a decent amount of limestone available. This is this nice gray fella here. Or if you don't want to go for that, at least try to check out that you can find some clay. But ideally you have clay and limestone, because clay is really good at insulating stuff and limestone is really good at being solid. And also keep in mind, if you look for iron, most of the time limestone and iron are close together, or you get lucky and there's direct iron ore patches like these above the ground, but these are rather rare. If you don't know where to look for, start digging around some limestone deposit. Usually after a few grids, iron will show up. So when you're done with that, it's time to start planning your buildings. I personally really like to go for buildings that are for living and buildings that are for working. Basically, if you don't mind some slight moral debuff, you can go for you can go for buildings that have several beds inside. But that really depends on your personal building style. I personally love apartments for every person. That's something I believe in. But you can do it however you deem it fit. One thing is important though, however you want to put it down. Whenever you put down living stuff and work stuff in the same room, you create mixed rooms. If you only create work stuffs in the same rooms, you will eventually create workshops, which also provide work bonuses for your people. I don't want to spoiler exactly how these are built, because my guide is not meant to be a spoiler guide, but that should be already enough to be mentioned. So when you set up your base, check out where your people want to live, and then then based from that, for example, I want to say this time I'm going to make some dormitory-like structure. So we're going to say there's house 1 and house 2 for people living there. And now I know where most of the logistics will happen. And on this spot, in the vicinity of that, I love to put down my storage house and start to evolve all my other business around that. So let's drop down a stockpile zone to make it more clear. So people living here, here's the stockpiles, and now for example we can start drawing down our buildings around here. For example, this is going to be a big workshop for wood stuff and whatever might come across here too. And then we could go for another building where we start to do our stone cutting and all the things. Overall, I felt like it's very valuable to focus on having specialized buildings and trying to manage the infrastructure in between, that your people don't have long walking ways, because the longer the walking ways grow, the more unhappy your people will be, and therefore you also waste time, and wasted time is not really cool. So in terms of building materials, in case you are wondering what you should take, the thing there is clay is the best thermal insulator and limestone is the most solid material. Clay is good in hot weathers, and limestone is good in every other aspect. Wood is only good when you have nothing else, but since we're just starting out, this has to suffice. Another thing which is quite common, but I want to mention it one more time: try to keep floorboards below your storage areas to avoid decomposing of items. Of course, it needs also a roof, but that goes without saying. So roof-wise, I really want to recommend the wicker roof here a little bit more directly, because at the beginning when I was starting out, I built way too much with hay and other materials, and I really did not see the value of wicker roofs, because whenever you chop down a tree, twigs and sticks fall off, and that's very, very useful to use these as a roofing material, whereas hay growing here can be also used as a roofing material. But I personally feel like these twigs allocate so friggin' quickly in my settlements. I enjoyed them a lot I enjoyed it a lot to use them as roof material. Alright, so as we see here, they're digging out the useless cave, but we don't disturb them. Another thing which is really important to mention is that for research, I love to have a separate storage room which is completely away from every other area. So, because research is basically destroyed once the books containing the research get destroyed, and therefore I really like to go for a safe spot where I store those books. Basically, imagine that your library has to stay safe. I mean, that goes without saying. So if you can, always put up a separate safe area for your research. So speaking about research, let's dive into that topic next. So there we are. One last thing before we dive into the research. Buildings or workbenches in this game can't be moved once they are placed down, so planning out your rooms before you actually place down those things is quite important. I just wanted to mention that a little bit, and I hope that the developers will help us in the future with movable desks and such, but for now we have to work like that. So the research. Technology-wise, I can't emphasize the architecture and the agriculture. I can't recommend them as key technologies enough. Like, agriculture should be the first thing which you research after architecture, and only because you can't research agriculture without architecture. So after that, really important technologies in my personal opinion are wooden weaponry, because it allows you to craft short bows, which are absolutely invaluable when fighting off enemies. You can go for longbows later, but honestly, the short bow is a very, very effective weapon to work with no problems whatsoever. After that, I really like to recommend smelting, and after smelting, defensive structures. The smelting technology allows you to craft iron ingots, and after that you can craft reinforced doors out of those. Reinforced doors are basically what keeps the raider out of your settlement, and are a very powerful way to get the job done in case you're feeling not safe. And yeah, can't recommend it enough. Beyond that, traps can be built after that, and like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, traps need components, and components can be crafted with smelting too. So defensive structures is entirely useless without the smelting tech. Just want to mention that. After that, I can recommend tailoring to enable you winter and summer clothing. It's really vital to have these. And after that, you are pretty much up to your own liking. I thought these were, sorry, my bad. If you want to go for trapping, you need to research blacksmithing afterwards to get mechanical components, but the reinforced door doesn't need that. Reinforced doors are actually really good technologies. After that, the other stuff here is Cool, but not necessary to get your settlement rolling. The only thing that I really want to mention here after that is brewing, because brewing unlocks alcohol, and just like real medieval people are, your people grow really unhappy without alcohol. So brewing tech is another thing that I really try to get as quick as possible when whenever I build up a settlement in the longer run. Keep in mind that you can go for rough wine, which can be produced by red currant shrubs. So creating alcohol is almost no problem once you have the technology and the brewing station down. Food preservation and cooking are luxury technologies in my opinion. Of course, it's really good to have a kitchen, but you can survive several years just with a fireplace alone and a underground sub-zero storage area like this. So when you want to go for these storage areas, let's go into the next topic. There's one thing that's really worth mentioning, and that's how to pull these, to put these up. And keep in mind that in this game, everything which is further than 4 grids away from a wall will be eventually collapse. So as we see here, this thing here is this spot here is further away than 4 grids from the middle of everything, so it will collapse. Keeping these alive will help you to save the room from collapsing. And when you want to go for food storages, I'm going to fast forward until our friends have cut that out. So when you want to place down the storage area, there's one thing worth mentioning. Of course, stuff will decompose and rot if there's no flooring below, but there's one thing that is a problem. When we place down flooring down here, the temperature will rise. The best temperature insulator is dirt itself. So ideally, you can now do different things. You can either expand the room and leave a ring around your storage area like I did here, but you can also just dig out a cooling room that's just directly connected to this room without a door and just with dirt patches on the ground left. These are little tricks which you can use, but after all, as you see here, it's -2 degrees inside, and the more spatches I dig out in this room, the colder it will grow. And the more spatches I fill up with flooring again, the warmer it will go again. So basically, if you ever suffer with not enough cooling in these rooms, just make them bigger with dirt piles on the floor and you should be okay. Now then, so now let's talk about defenses. Defenses are really easy in this game. You basically just have to put a box around your base and wait for the enemies to come and then stand on top of these walls. In case that didn't make sense to you, I'm going to show you what I mean. We're just going to put down a couple of walls like that. Of course, usually I would build my base larger than that, but just to give you an idea, just pull a few walls around our place. Here we go. Then we're going to do a couple of doors in here. I said doors, not wooden walls. Here we go. And then we just put a staircase over here. Oh, is that enough? Now let's put it over there. And let's wait for a moment. So a couple of moments later, we have a fortification which looks a little bit like this. And the real cool part about all that is, as soon as these guys have built the wall completely, your people can walk on top of that and just use their arrows to rain death upon your enemies. Every enemy who's only wielded with a melee weapon will now helplessly try to attack the main gate while being pelted with arrows. The cool thing about this is that you can always just put another wall in front of that, and then we just use a little bit of flooring, and once that's up, you can also use this as a fortress wall. Of course, ideally with stone or whatever materials you prefer, but the defenses here can be expanded. You can also just plug in more doors here in between. Your enemies won't get wiser. They just will try to bash through even more doors. So that's basics of defense. There's, of course, you can go for castles and whatever you want to, but I wanted to showcase that really easy construction which only needs a staircase and a rectangular wall around your base to get the job done. This is really, really cool to know and worth mentioning, in my opinion. Okay, so beyond that, we are pretty much done with the basics of this, well, with the overall ideas of this tutorial. The game is not really finished at this point. I really noticed that at a lot of moments. In case you need some ideas with corpse removal, I really like to use pyres. Just slam down a couple of them to get the ball rolling. You can also use pyres as a distraction for your enemies. Basically, when you put them down in the down before the front gates, they will come and attack that. Raiders are really, really happy to destroy your stuff. And yeah, I hope that stuff will help you out to get your ball rolling quicker in this game. And of course, there's a lot of things, and if you have any idea of tips that are worthy to be here, just be my guest and add them into the comments down below. One last thing just crossed my mind that I totally forgot. I knew that there was something. In case you are struggling with finding animals to hunt, just scroll all the way down to the ground floor and hover across the map. Here you can then see everything running over the map, especially useful when you're looking for game in winter. And yeah, that's the last thing. I knew I had forgotten something. So thanks for watching, guys. Like I said, if you have anything you might want to add, just slap it into the comment section down there. I'd be really, really happy if you did so. And of course, leave a thumbs up if you liked that video. And last but not least, check out my channel. I do daily content like that, so just subscribe, turn on those notifications, and don't miss anything in the future. I'd be really happy if you did. Of course, there's also stuff in the description down there, so among those, my Twitch channel, where I do regular streams, so if you might want to hang out, I'd be really, really happy too. And to end this advertisement block, feel free to check out the support links down there. I'm a really, really happy person if you have a look at them. But let me thank you one more time for watching, because that really means a ton to me. And have a good time. See you soon. Bye-bye.